Welcome back after the coffee. We're going to begin, even though some people are coming in, mainly to get going. And I'm conscious that everyone's still sitting towards the doors, so we'll look in that direction. I'm actually not going to say very much because I'm going to hand on to Abdul Wahab Teffaha, who's from the Arab Air Carriers Organization, for the next session on globalization, liberalization, how it's transforming the aviation market. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Nick. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your relentlessness in coming in on time. I have the pleasure today to be sharing this session with Laila Harib and Margus Rahuoja. Laila Harib is the Deputy Director General of the Civil Aviation in the UAE. Margus is the Chief of Cabinet of the Vice President of the European Commission. My friend Giorgio Callegari, Deputy Director General of Aeroflot. And lastly, but not least, my friend Ghaith, he's the CEO of flydubai. Now let's get started. I prepared a few slides for you in order just to set the mood. The first slide shows that in 1990, 70% of the total revenue passenger kilometers, which is the measurement of the productivity of the airlines, the measurement of the movement, was in between in Europe, the US, and between the Europe and the US, 70%. In 2010, that ratio came down to 53%. With the rise of the Middle East and Asia, they became 36% of the total RPKs in the world. In 2030, according to the Boeing estimates, the ratio is going to be 40% in North America and Europe, and the ratio is going to be 43% in the Middle East and Asia. So definitely the center of gravity of aviation is moving eastward. My second slide is just an indication of what does that mean in terms of passenger numbers. You don't need to really read all of that. These are the passenger numbers within regions and in between regions. This is 2013. What is interesting is this percentage. The percentage growth between Europe and the Americas was during the last 5 years only 5%. 2013 over 2008, 5%. That same growth between Europe and Asia was 33.8%. Between Asia and the Arab world was 41.5%. And so on and so forth. So it's basically, it is showing that mature markets have plateaued and emerging markets are the ones which are the driving engine of the growth for the aviation industry. This slide shows the concentration of traffic in the hands of the players in the industry. Which airlines are driving what in which region? We see that, let me start by Asia. The three alliances have almost the same ratios in between Asia, Europe, and North America. Not so in the Middle East. We will find that 55% of the traffic in the Middle East is still carried by unaligned airlines, while the low-cost airlines have gained prominence, great prominence in Europe. 26.3% of the total traffic is carried by low-cost airlines. In the USA, and as a byproduct of the consolidation in the USA and between the three big airlines, American, Delta, and United, we see that the low-cost airlines have been squeezed to 10%. In Asia, still the low-cost airlines represent a good 14.5%. In the Arab world, they represent a healthy 12.8% in spite of the fact that they are limited in numbers. But thanks to the rise of flydubai, Air Arabia, and the likes, we've seen this ratio increasing. This slide shows the profitability of the airline industry during the last 20 years. Ups and downs. Basically, the airline industry scored between 1995 and 2014 a net profit of $2.4 billion during the last 20 years, which is 0.4% profitability ratio over their revenues. My last slide is showing the change in the movements, air traffic movements, between the various regions of the world. The net result for the US for the last 5 years is that there is 13.3% less aircraft movements in the US. In Europe, there is a net of 6.6% less aircraft movements. Conversely, we see in the Asia Pacific 30.3% increase in aircraft movement. In the Arab world, it's similar, 30.6%. So now I turn to the lady and the gentleman on the panel. I'll start with Margus. Margus, it's very clear that the center of gravity of the aviation is moving east, and that Europe, the US, the old fiefdoms of the air traffic of the world are losing grounds to emerging markets. What do you think of that? What are you doing about it?
Well, first of all, hello for everyone.
Yeah,
hello
can you get
Commission.
the microphone
Can you hear
closer?
that? Can you hear? So first of all, I would like to thank you for welcoming the European Commission to this wonderful place. So it is always good to be here and discuss frankly and openly all the issues, and you know we have lots of issues. So the question that you posed to me, that whether we have a shifting, let's say, pole of gravity, I would say we have emerging several centers of gravity. So therefore, I would slightly disagree with you, but that's the purpose of the panel, isn't it? So the way I see it is that we have had, let's say, in Europe and North America, a long period of time when we basically dominated the world. And this time is over, and then I give you that. But if you look at your first slide, you see that the share of the North America...
Sorry, can we have a little bit less echo, please,
yes.
in the sound? I think everybody agrees that the echo is worsening.
The pie is growing, so therefore I'm very happy about it. So the pie is not becoming smaller, so it means that actually there are more opportunities. And I think, all in all, just to remind you, in Europe we have 450 functioning big airports. Our traffic in 2011 was about 800 million passengers. Today is close to 1 billion passengers. And in 2030, we will have about 14.5 million flights. So even if you look at the pie, that the overall, let's say, picture looks, the shift of the center of gravity, I'm not so concerned about Europe or North America, because we still have our very good share of the pie.
Well, this is not what you exactly said in your communication recently, right? Since you started the argument, I will continue.
No problem.
In the recent communication issued by the European Commission, you were clearly very worried about the competitiveness of the European airports and European airlines. So that is not, exactly what you said, isn't it?
If I may, one doesn't contradict the other. Of course, we are looking with envy everything that is going on in Southeast Asia and Asia. And of course, we're looking with envy how the Gulf carriers have been able to tap into that market. We have our own industrial interests. We want to have that pie as well. So that is where is our worry. We want to see how we make sure that European companies are also benefiting from that growth, so that we will not only stay inside Europe and let's say, be happy what we have. We want more.
Ghaith, why is it that, say, you know, I can speak about the airlines of the region, why is it that they are successful more than the success rate of their counterparts in Europe?
Well, I think, first of all, you know, the whole world is becoming one global village. So as long as we believe in that, I think the success that we are seeing in our part of the world is a continuation of the success that happened in Europe, because after all, they are manufacturing our aircraft, and then they are also showing us the way. The difference between our region and Europe, from my point of view, is that here we are an emerging market. We have a lots of investments in our region and focus from the government to the individual on developing an aviation hub that is competitive to what is in Europe, that drives our economy. So aviation is a driver for our economy. We are creating a hub because our visionary leaders wants to make our country more accessible, and we are investing in the infrastructure. You compare to what happened in Europe. When is the last time you have seen a mega airport? When have you seen a mega order of aircraft? And I cannot remember. So I think that's where the difference is coming. I think if we really want to discuss issue as human beings, we should never think about your share and my share. We should think about overall the pie is getting bigger. And because the pie is getting bigger, because of the success of all of us, and that's why we should always push for more open engagements, more open skies, without any restriction, as long as we are doing it in a profitable way and we are helping the world become one global village. All right. So if you want a simple answer, this part of the world or our part of the world, we are investing more, the other side, not.
Laila, you know, Ghaith talked about we should not differentiate. We should be open for competition, and governments need to embrace the role of aviation as an economic lever, as a negotiator on behalf of the GCAA in the UAE. Do you find that easy to convince other governments with, or you're finding difficulties in talking to other governments about the value of providing market access to the airlines you represent or to the airlines of your country?
Well, I think liberalization, nobody denies...
Just move the microphone forward, yeah.
There's echo, huh?
Closer.
Nobody denies liberalization benefits. I don't think when we go and negotiate with other governments, they deny the benefits from liberalization. They can see there's a lot of studies, IATA studies, AACO studies. The benefits from the liberalization in EU is very visible on the economy in EU. The thing is, the governments has to balance between few things. Liberalization and the benefits of their economy. And then we need to understand also, as UAE, I need to understand other countries when they try to have some protectionist policies towards their airlines.
Where protection?
Well, some governments.
To know that.
We have some governments have some protection policies towards their airlines, but we need to understand also the reasons behind it. So what are the reasons behind these protectionist policies? These airlines are flag carriers for some countries. And these countries look at it not only from economy point of view, but from national security and defense point of view. So the governments need to balance between so many things, between the benefits of liberalization to their economy and between the benefits, between the national security and defense reasons. But again, every government has to look at the consumer. At the end of the day, the government has responsibility towards the customers, and they should provide with their policies, either with their regulation or deregulation, to provide options for the customers. And if you open the market for your customers, the customers will have, they might have less options, but they will have better options in quality and efficiency and customer experience.
Okay. Giorgio, you carry two hats. One emerging, the other one in Europe, which is, mostly is a mature market. How do you qualify your major attributes as emerging from Russia and the major hindrances you find in having most of your operations to Europe?
Thanks a lot, Abdul, Wahab. It's as Margus said, it's a pleasure to be here and to have such an interesting conversation and debate. I'm taking the liberty of, let me say, trying and summarizing our perspective. First of all, in going back to your presentation, where you show the shifting of the center of gravity, I think that we are also part of that, in the sense that from a geographic perspective, Moscow is to the east of Europe, and probably is not as well known, but we are on the shortest route to a number of destinations that are today being routed via the Gulf. So we are competitors to the Gulf carriers in some ways for some of the same flows, and we therefore have some sympathy for the approach to liberalizing the market that they are pursuing. And in considering that, we're looking at the lessons of history. You cannot fight geography, you cannot fight socio-economic development, and therefore the combination of growth, the combination of investments that are so large and strategic in this part of the world as in Russia will certainly shift that balance. In that respect, we're privileged because we can look both to our west and therefore, let me say, be a player in Europe, and to our east and be a player in Asia. Main challenges for us, as I'm sure for most of the Gulf carriers, is the complexity of having to deal with so many different and conflicting regulations. I mean, the EU ETS, we had some debate on that last time we met with Margus, just to name one. I mean, so the complexity of a very fragmented regulatory environment, from environment to sometimes, operational standards, to safety standards, to a number of issues. So those, I would say, are the main issues. But I definitely see the balance of power moving, but that will not mean that Europe will see its influence in any way, taken away, because as Margus said, the market is so big that everybody will want to have a slice of it.
Margus, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I wanted to say that what is interesting is emerging, that everybody agrees that the marketplace is global. So what I would just want to say is that in this global marketplace, it's clear also that you need global rules, because it's clear that we don't want to have a wild market that, the strongest eats the weakest. That's not the point. So therefore also I think it's very interesting to see how, let's say, taking the Gulf area, taking Southeast Asia, taking North America and Europe, so far it has been mostly Europe and North America who have regulated. So it is very interesting to see how do we now continue that regulation and look into the marketplace in a few years, what has emerged. I mean, I hope that AACO will do its job, but I think regions to region can do its job as well.
Well, let me follow up on that. Region to region, doesn't that actually increase fragmentation? Because ultimately, if you agree something, say, with the USA, which wasn't to the liking of China, Asia, or the Arab world, or Africa, what do you do in that instance? You agreed on something where, so the airlines who are operating into Europe will find a set of regulation, into the US will find that already happening, but
Exactly.
Just to try to underline that, what is happening. So isn't the only way to deal with aviation regulation is global, because aviation is global?
If I may, I think you are completely right. Of course, the first preferred option would have global regulation for a global industry. Everybody agrees to it. Unfortunately, let's say, if you look at the global regulators. They are soft regulators and they are slow regulators. So what do you suggest? Meanwhile, no regulation wouldn't function either. If you look at the, let's say, again, from the historical perspective, North America, Europe have regulated not because they like regulation, they dislike regulation, but this is out of the necessity. I just give you one example. The liberalization of the ownership and control rules and unlimited access to each other's markets in Europe has generated the necessary growth that was lacking, that everybody said, you know, Europe is saturated. If you look at now from the end of 90s, because of that, we have an enormous growth of the low-cost carriers and the market that did not exist before. But it came because there was regulation. So it was not just wild liberalization, but of course, this regulation was contained in one region. And I agree, I take your point that sometimes we have tensions, but without that regulation, we wouldn't have Ryanair. Thank you.
Let me move to another point, which is of interest to you. I heard you once in one of the conferences talking about the alliances and their role in the aviation industry. Giorgio has some very sharp ideas about the role of alliances, in spite of the fact that you are a member of the alliance. What do you think the future of the alliances is?
Well, I think that, as I said publicly, so I will stand by my statement, that alliances are useful but have no future. So in the following sense, that as a number of
So
other...
we're doing the right thing here in the region. We have 55% of the traffic is non-aligned.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is that alliances have, in my opinion, successfully identified what they can deliver to the customer, which is basically a combination of frequent flyer arrangements and a combination of basic airport services, but it's very difficult to go beyond that. And as everybody on the panels this morning, and I'm sure in the panels later in the day will say, airlines will continue to have to identify ways to take out cost and ways to increase revenue per unit of capacity. Complex governance mechanisms, which are the result of very large alliances, 25 carriers, 28 carriers, 20 carriers, will not facilitate that. And therefore, the carriers will go beyond that, as they've been doing, for the last 5 years at least. So if I look at the investment of an American carrier into a British carrier, if I look at the investment of a Chinese group into a European cargo carrier, if I look at the investment of a US carrier and a European carrier into a Brazilian carrier, those are all things that are going across alliances and that are proving that in order to generate the kind of true value, you need to go beyond that. And alliances, just to conclude, alliances are becoming more and more a limitation to those developments.
A limitation, okay. That's a very important word from somebody who is part of an alliance. Ghaith, low-cost airlines have pioneered do-it-alone concept. You've done extremely well. You're now moved into interlining. Do you see a prospect for interlining with other airlines, hence cooperating along the line with a low-cost model and perhaps in the future a full-service carrier? Especially after you introduce business class now.
No, of course, we have a model which is focused on efficiency, which we call low cost, to ensure that everything that we do has the lowest cost possible and with profit in the end of it. You know, as simple as that. But when it comes to aligning yourself to other airline, especially since we here work in a region where a lot of airline comes together and we have a lot of customer demand. Our customer is not like Europe. In Europe, you have one market, one customer, one product. So it's easy to sort of, for us, we have different clientele and a lot of airline operate in our region. So in order for us to grow, we have to work with other airlines. So in flydubai, we do interline with many airlines. and we have SPA agreements.
Including full service?
Including full service. Right. And we try to offer the service as bundle as possible, so in order for us to deal with these airlines.
Would you think in the future, say, joining an alliance, in spite of what Giorgio said?
No, I don't think we will join an alliance. You know, right. I think if there is somebody who has proven that the alliance is exactly what my colleague here said, you know, this part of the world we have seen. When you are part of the alliance, you have to grow within that group of companies. You cannot grow yourself unless it is aligned with the other people, which means you are restricted. And so that's why, as far as we are concerned, I don't think we will ever be in an alliance. And this has been the way it is in this part of the world.
All right. Margus, one thing I noticed through the presentation is that with consolidation in the US, I mean heavy consolidation, in the US, low-cost airlines have shrunk, the number of movements has shrunk, and therefore there is a certain degree of concern by communities in the US that they may lose their connections because of that consolidation. So as a regulator, you want to say something?
No, I said it's not the other low-cost airline have shrunk. The other airline become low-cost. They join the party.
Good.
That's good.
Yeah. That's true. Do you, as a regulator, up till now, the US DOT did not, I mean, they approved the US-American merger. They approved lots of other mergers. That led to 3 airlines, basically, controlling almost 80%, 85% of the market. Do you think that kind of eventuality happening in Europe?
Thank you. I think it's a relevant question. For the time being, the trend or the numbers don't show that trend. What we see in Europe is that still low-cost airlines are increasing connections, and the outcome has been the 450% increase of the point-to-point connections with more than 2 airlines. What, however, we see today with consolidation of the old sort of legacy carriers, the small carriers from Eastern Europe mostly, that regional connectivity suffers. Because if you look at the LCC, they're not really interested in quality connection. They're interested in taking the tourists from one place to another during the season and making money on that. So I think as a regulator, we see the trend in Europe that from one side we have very strict state aid rules where we don't allow, let's say, states to save ailing airlines, and we actually let them to go bankrupt, but we lose the regional connectivity in a qualitative way. So if you take, for instance, the bankruptcy of Malev, we lost, let's say, connections to capital of Hungary for 7 to 8 months. So of course, as a regulator, I would say this is unacceptable.
So you draw the line of consolidation where communities are going to lose their connectivity. This
Yes.
is where you draw the line.
Well, for the time being, let's say, if you look at Europe, we are 28 member countries, so, and also varying a lot in sizes. So in some countries like France, if you close an airport here or there, it is, yes, local community that suffers. But if you close an airport in Vilnius, capital of Lithuania, you lose the local business connectivity. So this is a completely different, let's say, size of the problem. So what is our response to that? Today we don't have that, but we are now looking into the issue to try to define the issue, and as you know, we are redefining our state aid and other rules for that purpose. Today I can tell you we have an issue, we don't have an answer.
By the way, there is a technical problem with the application. So if I understand from the organizers that there are microphones available, so if anyone wants to raise a question, please raise your hand. Yes. Can we have a microphone here, please? Can we have a microphone? By the time the microphone is there, I want to ask a question to Laila. Just a second. Laila, we saw that in the slides I presented, that the movement of aircraft in the Arab countries
Yes.
has increased 30%. We all know that we have a problem. Tony Tyler this morning said that if there is nothing done in the air traffic management of the region, specifically here in the GCC, then it may become the Achilles heel of the growth of the region. What are you doing as UAE regulator in order to resolve that issue? I'm sorry, I'll come back to you, okay?
It's not only UAE issue. I think it's the region issue. We have Saudi, we have Oman, we have Bahrain. So we do acknowledge that there are issues with our airspace, and we need a lot of efforts to resolve those issues. Now, what UAE is doing and what our ANS Center, with all of the we are working with all the stakeholders. We have recently done a study for airspace restructuring, and we are looking at how to increase the efficiency of the airspace, and that is with the integration with everybody from the stakeholders. We have issues.
60% of which is used by the military exclusively.
That's our airspace.
How do you handle that?
Well, we work with the military very closely, actually, and yes, we totally understand the issue. Now, it's not only UAE; it's the regions behind around us as well. So the flow is affected from Oman and Saudi and other countries. We do have an issue, and the growth is continuously through the years ahead, and without really a drastic improvement in our airspace, I don't think we can maintain this growth. But fortunately, we are working with Oman, our ANS here director. He's the head of a joint committee for ANS, and there are some future plans for that.
All right. Sir.
Thank you for the panelists. Really, you have a lot of information. But I see there is an agreement in the panelists that aviation is globalized. Everybody say, and aviation industry is very globalized, and as they say, it is a small city of globalization in aviation industry. Do you think, Mr. Margus, that failure of European country on increasing their or expanding in the last 5 or 10 years, they make this debate of unfair competition or transparencies or other issues? And if you can agree with me that each airline, they are affecting too much by the rule and regulation of their authorities, if you can agree with that. And as you know, that many European airlines, they were stars on the airline. Like,
for the interest of time, thank you very much. I think it's a very good question. If you can make it as short as possible, please.
Okay. But that's my question. That the failure is two things: that they cannot expand according to the rule and regulation which is implemented by their countries, and at the same time for internal companies' policies where they can compete with the other regions. Thank you very much.
Excellent question. Margus, I'm not the only one who wants to pick a fight with you.
Well, it's wonderful. I love the discussion. I actually, again, come back to your first slide about the pie. If you look at, let's say, the discussion we have had so far when the pie was small, this was between us and the Americans. So we said, okay, since the world aviation is mostly concentrated in these areas, let's talk about the rules of the game. That is exactly what we are trying to do now when the world is expanding and when we accept that the center of gravity is shifting. The only thing what we're asking in Europe is not so much impose anything, and this is, I think, comes only from probably misinterpretation of our language. Because sometimes, you know, when you speak language, it's not necessarily people understand what you say, but they understand, well, I don't know, the tone or the way you're saying things. I think there Europeans have a lot to learn to kind of say something so that it is actually understood in a correct way. And I think what we have tried to do by launching a discussion in AACO last year with the General Assembly to say that we understand that it is no more US, EU, it is much more. It's Southeast Asia, China, Gulf. Let's talk about the rules of engagement, but we cannot have a global marketplace without global rules. So I think this is the only thing. And I think the second point I would like to make is that it is not only about competition, it's also about air safety, it's also about ATM, like was raised here, it's about aviation security, it's about the whole value chain. I think we should be discussing, not only focusing, let's say, on the things that hurt, but there are plenty of other things where we need to do business, and I think also we in Europe have plenty of solutions for that, not only problems, as you nicely put it. Thank you.
Just want to add something.
Please, Laila.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that. I mean, you touched on a very important issue, which is the leadership of ICAO. I think last year we had the Air Transport Conference and then the General Assembly, where we had we came up with a very good results in fair competition and these policies. It is after a lot of negotiations with so many regions, so many representatives. So I think what I want to emphasize on that, we really need to trust ICAO leadership while we are working with ICAO, and I don't think we need to rush and have have our own policies while talking to other regions.
A question, Ghaith. I know that in Dubai Air Show, since you represent the CEO of an airline which operates from Dubai, there were orders for something like 200 plus airplanes. If there are restrictions on the operations of those airplanes, do you think the airlines will continue to buy them?
Well, I think, I think that's the argument. I think what the airline in this part of the world have achieved through the last few years by making a difference in the aviation industry by ordering all these aircraft, I think, and if there is a restriction, the airline will not be able to operate these aircraft wherever the restriction are. And I think we should always look at the opportunity that this part of the world have achieved as far as giving the global aviation industry a boost by keeping the business rolling and developing more airline to ensure that access is not denied. Because if the access is denied, you don't need these aircraft. And it's very important that, as I said, we are one global village. We should all work together for the good of the whole humanity. And if we are buying aircraft, access should never be denied to us, wherever that access is denied.
Thank you. Margus, you wanted to have a short comment because Nick is watching me and is saying,
what I wanted to make is maybe a point that we in Europe, we are the champions of lifting the rules on ownership and control and would like to open up markets. But what we want to do is on a reciprocal basis. That is what we're doing. Let's take example of Morocco. We agreed the rules of the game and there are no restrictions. That is exactly what we like because we think that overall the market will benefit, but you have to have the rules of engagement. That's the only thing we say. So therefore, I think we are looking forward for the ICAO discussion or any other bilateral or multilateral discussion where we can have, let's say, an agreed principles and then just go on.
Well, I just wanted to say something. Being part of the smaller region, I think what you have in Europe is great. I hope we, in our small region, we have as open as a region that you have in Europe. Unfortunately, we don't have one region, we have many regions put together. Just to complement.
Okay, I understand that the issues which were on the table, actually I would have continued the panel. There are many issues to be addressed by the lady and gentleman. I just want to give the floor back to Nick with one thought about something that was mentioned here. We can debate as much as we want about the principal issues, about fundamental issues and so on. One thing we cannot debate, which is the urgency of having something to do in order for this region to continue its growth. So I will just a small note to Laila, and I hope, and you said it, It's not about UAE air traffic management, it's about Saudi Arabia, it's about everybody. Why don't you do a traffic flow management unit together in order to start bringing this problem to a solution? Thank you, Nick. It's just an idea. I hope you take it. Nick, the floor is yours. Thank you.